Good day, students. Welcome to Mathgotserved.com. In this clip, we're going to be going over section 1.4c of our virtual Algebra 1 text. We're going to be focusing on how to add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators. To get us started, we're going to take a look at the rules for adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. So let's go ahead and write it down. Rules for adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. On the previous presentation, we focused on how to add and subtract fractions with like denominators. On this one, we're going to be focusing on fractions with unlike denominators. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the rules. The first rule has to do with how the fractions presented are expressed. So number one, you want to express the fractions, all the fractions, in proper or improper forms. What does this mean? That means that if you're given a fraction that's presented as a mixed number, or integer, they should be converted into improper fractions. Okay, so that's step one, rule number one. And then sometimes you might have fractions with adjacent signs in between them. So in that scenario, what you simply do is you multiply fractions, or multiply adjacent signs where applicable. Okay? Alright, now the next thing you have to address is the fact that the denominators are different. So since the denominators are different, as highlighted in the term unlike denominators, what you're going to do is find the LCD of all the denominators. Okay, so find the LCD of all the denominators. And then you're going to express all the fractions as equivalent fractions with the LCD as your denominators. Okay, with the LCD as your denominators. Alright, so now will have converted a sum or difference of fractions with unlike denominators into the sum or difference of fractions with like denominators. Now that your denominators are alike, we can then proceed to either add or subtract the numerator depending on the operation. You add or subtract the numerator and keep the denominator. Okay, please do not add or subtract the denominator. You keep the denominator exactly as it is, as the LCD. Alrighty? And then lastly, we will just simply reduce. In some cases, you might have to express the fraction as mixed numbers. It just depends on the instructions that you're provided with. Okay? And express the improper fractions as mixed numbers where applicable. as mixed numbers. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the formula for adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. Okay, so the formula is as follows. For adding, let's say you have a over b plus c over d. So you have two fractions with unlike denominators. So what you do here is you multiply the second fraction by b. The reason is because you have a b in the first fractional denominator and you need it in the second fraction. And then you multiply the first fraction by d, top and bottom, and you have AD over BD plus CB over BD. Now that their denominators are identical, you can then add the numerator and keep the denominator. Alright? So this also applies to subtraction. So if you're adding, you follow this procedure, or even if you're subtracting, you just follow the same procedure also. Okay? Now let's take a look at some examples. Alright, instructions are for us to evaluate. So let's say we have 3 over 8 minus 2/3. Alright, so let's do it. So if you take a look at the fractions that were given, these two are both proper fractions, so that's good. Alright, so we want their denominators to be equal to the LCD. So to do that, we want to find the LCD of 8 and 3. Alright, we don't know what it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 8 and decompose it completely. So 2 goes into 8 4 times, and then 2 goes into 4 2 times. So 8 is basically 2 times 2 times 2. So we have 3 divided by 2 times, and then minus 2/3. Okay. Alright, now that we have it decomposed, we can now proceed to find the LCD. So the fraction to the left has 3 2's, the fraction to the right has none. So you multiply it by 3 2's. The fraction to the right by 3 2's in the denominator and the numerator. The fraction to the left doesn't have any 3, so you multiply it by 1 3 on the top and bottom. So now look at the denominators, we have identical numbers. Alright, so when we multiply together, that will tell us the LCD. 3 times 3 is 9 over, in the denominator, 3 times 2 is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. Minus 2 times 2 is 4 times 2, 8 times 2, 16. And then 3 times 2 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, 12 times 2 is 24. The LCD of 8 and 3 is 24. Okay? Now that we have identical denominators, we'll now subtract the numerator and keep the denominator. Okay? 9 minus 16 is negative 7 divided by 24. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our final answer. Now let's take a look at another example. What if we have to find the difference between, or the sum of the following fractions? For number 2, what if we have 3 over 2 plus negative 1/3? Alright, let's take a look at that. So with this one, we have 3 over 2 plus negative 1/3. We have two adjacent signs next to each other. We have the plus and the minus. We have to fix that problem. So we have to multiply these two signs. Plus times minus is going to be minus, because anytime you multiply different signs, you have a minus. Alright, now let's proceed to find the LCD. What is the LCD of, what's the LCD of 2 and 3? That's the question. LCD of 2 and 3. Alright, let's take a look at the fractions we have here. The fraction on the left has a 2 in the denominator. The fraction on the right does not. So we'll multiply by 2 top and bottom. The fraction on the right has 3 in the denominator. The one on the left does not. So you multiply by 3 top and bottom. And now you simplify, and you're going to get 3 times 3, 9 over 6 minus 2 over 6. So the LCD of 2 and 3 is 6. Now that the denominator is identical, we'll now proceed to subtract the numerator and keep the denominator. Okay? 9 minus 2 is 7 over 6. That's your final answer, or you can express it as mixed numbers. 6 goes into 7 once, remainder 1. 1 over 6, that's the answer to question number 2. Alright, let's take a look at another example. What if we have, for number 3, negative 2 minus 3 over 5? Alright, so in this case, we have a whole number, an integer, and we're subtracting 3 over 5 from that integer. So we need to express this integer as an improper fraction. So what we'll do is just simply express it as negative 2 over 1 minus 3 over 5. So anytime you have an integer, just put a 1 in the denominator to express it as an improper form. Now we need to find the LCD of the two denominator values since they're different. Okay, find the LCD of 1 and 5. So this has this has a 1 here. This, you can just put a 1, it doesn't make any difference. And then on the left side we need a 5, so we'll multiply by 5 top and bottom. Multiply by 5. So that gives us negative 10 over 5 minus 3 over 5. So the LCD of 1 and 5 is 5. Alright? So now that the denominators are the same, we can now subtract the numerator and keep the denominator. Okay? Negative 10 minus 3, signs are the same. You add and keep the sign. Negative 13 over 5 is the answer to question number 3. Alright, let's take a look at number 4, the last question in this presentation. What if we have negative 3.5 plus negative 2 and 5/6? Now we have two mixed numbers. Okay, so negative 3.5 plus negative 2 and 5/6. Alright, so we need to convert them into improper form. So 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1, 7. Negative 7 over 2. We have two adjacent signs. We'll multiply them next by each other. You get a minus. 6 times 2 is 12 plus 5 is 17 over 6. Now the denominators are different, so we have to decompose 6. So let's decompose 6. 6 becomes 2 goes into 6 3 times, so it's 2 times 3. So we have negative 7 over 2 minus 17 over 2 times 3. Okay? So to make the denominators identical, we simply multiply this by 3 top and bottom. And now we have the same denominators. Let's multiply it out. We have negative 21 over 6 minus 17 over 6. Now what we're going to proceed to do, since they're now the same, is we're going to combine the numerator and keep the denominator. Okay? When we combine them, we add and keep the sign. We have negative 38 over 6. We can now divide the top and bottom by the greatest common factor, which is 2. 2 goes into both, and that reduces into negative 19 over 3. Alright, so there goes your final answer.